Good morning, everyone. Welcome to CSLDallas. This is our Sunday morning Science of Mind class, and my name is Tracy Brown. I invite you to join me in the learning and the going just a little bit deeper into the principles of science of mind. And let us begin with prayer. How beautiful it is to take a deep breath and remember that that breath is the breath of life itself. Breathing, life expressing, life expanding, life and evolving life. My life and the life of everyone within the sound of my voice. And I know it can be no other way because that is the breath of life for all life, all that has been created by the one life. I speak this word knowing that this morning, this time, is the perfect time to dive deeper into the truth, into understanding principles, and into committing to practice. So a deep gratitude for the willingness and the readiness to understand and to dive deeper. I simply smile and breathe and say, yes, I am ready. Ready to submit to spirit and surrender into the flow of spiritual law. And I invite you to join me in affirming that by saying, and so it is. So one of the things I love so much about this weekly commitment to explore the Science of Mind textbook and the writing of Ernest Holmes is because it gives us a chance to have a reminder about what we really believe, why we believe it, and how to apply it in our lives. This month at CSLDallas, the theme is practice, practice, practice. And who knew that when we named that theme, where we would be is actually related to practice. So in the last couple of weeks, there's been conversation about spiritual mind treatment, what it is and how it works. And today we begin to go into spiritual mind healing. And it's the second part around spiritual mind treatments. And it actually is called the second division, practice. Who knew that we would be aligning things in that way? So if you are following along in your textbook, then I am on page 183. It is the beginning of chapter 13. And the title for this chapter is Causes and Conditions. And the first section begins like this. Mental practice deals only with thought. The philosophy of spiritual mind healing is based upon the conception that we are living in a universe of intelligence, a spiritual universe, that thoughts are things, that definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, operate through a creative field and tend to reproduce themselves in form. Now, I'm just going to repeat that because it's a lot of words. And if you're reading along in the book, it might be easier to follow. But if you're just listening, I want to give you a chance to listen again and see what jumps out at you. The philosophy of spiritual mind healing is based upon the conception that we are living in a universe of intelligence, a spiritual universe. It's based on the conception that thoughts are things. It's based on the conception that definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, operate through a creative field, and tend to reproduce themselves in form. So that's just the first paragraph. And there are so many things when we are talking about practicing spiritual mind healing, really using mental thought. It's so critical that we remember that we live in a universe where there is infinite intelligence. It is always operating, and it is operating without any help from us. Sometimes when I'm doing treatment, I actually remind myself that the universe needs no help from me. It is in an infinite intelligence that knows what to do, when to do, how to do it, and why. However, it is also responding to our thoughts. And so the very next line that reminds us that thoughts are things, and that our state of consciousness is what we tend to reproduce in form. So what we think becomes our experience. What our subjective thoughts are reproduce themselves in the form of our life or our lives. And so mental practice deals only with thought, meaning we mentally practice, we think what we want to have happen in our lives. Now, I'm going to ask you what that means to you as I read into the next paragraph. And then we're going to come to you and see what your comments are, what your reactions are, and what your questions are. So be thinking about what you want to share that either demonstrates this principle or what questions you have about what it means. So the next paragraph begins with this. Therefore, it logically follows that this system of treatment is for the purpose of uncovering and neutralizing the wrong states of thought, of building in mind a concept of our spiritual birthright, thought which is built upon a realization of the divine presence has the power to neutralize negative thought, to erase it, just as light has the power to overcome darkness, not by combating darkness, but by being exactly what it is, light. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. I love this paragraph because it reminds me that I'm not fighting the negative thoughts. I'm just shifting my attention slightly to what I want to experience. And then I am putting in my thoughts, my affirmations, right? I am reaffirming and reaffirming and reaffirming that. And I don't have to fight that which I don't want. I simply need to replace it. I simply need to be the light. Like when I walked into my hallway last night and it was 10:30 at night and it was dark, I just flipped the light switch up and there was light. The light did not fight with the darkness, right? The power was already there. The light was already available. I just had to turn it on. Our thoughts are like that. Am I turning on my thoughts that bring light into my experience, or am I simply sitting in the dark? So I don't know, what does that bring to mind for you, those two paragraphs, as we begin to dive into mental practice, dealing only with thought? So Ryan, how can people share their comments or ask their questions?
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, if you guys are joining us live on Facebook, feel free to just put your comments in the comments section. If you guys are here with us inside of the Zoom room, I just encourage you to hit the raise your hand icon, or you can put the chat into the text chat below. Also, we try to keep it pretty anonymous over here, so you have the ability to say your questions with anonymity inside of the text and chat. So do we have any comments or suggestions? What are your guys' thoughts? All right, I'm going to introduce in Connie. Connie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Hello, Connie.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is wonderful, wonderful. Okay, good. Thank you. Good morning. What I'm finding in my journey is that a lot of negative thoughts, or I could say darkness, are wired into my brain. And not a lot, but some. But the good news is I'm noticing it for what it is. And now what I want to do is change it. So is practice, practice, practice the way to change it?
That is such a great observation, because actually all of us are programmed with a lot of darkness, or a lot of thoughts that are not necessarily encouraging us to be our best or to see the best in others, right? We have grown up in a society where there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of judgment, and there is a lot of simply bilateral thinking. It's either good or bad, and you want to be good, so you need to please certain people. And all of that can turn us away from the truth of us, and also who we want to be and how we want to be. And so the short answer would be yes, absolutely. The way that we change that is practice, 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 but not in a way that feels heavy. It's just being focused and being dedicated. And Connie, of course, you would ask that question because you are one of the people who has been exemplifying that, week after week, month after month, and sharing when you've been having positive results. But it's just practice, and the more we practice, the easier it becomes. But there's a little secret that a lot of times people don't realize. The difference between people who are licensed practitioners and ministers, it's not that we never have the darkness, or it's not that we don't recognize the darkness when it is happening in our lives. We've just been practicing so intently or for so long that we will notice it sooner and we will turn the light on sooner. That is the only difference. It doesn't mean that there's never, ever any darkness. So I want to say that not so much for you, Connie, specifically, but for everybody. Don't create a false goal that, but if I'm practicing enough, then everything will always be smooth. If I do my meditations every day, then I will never feel ruffled or frustrated. And if I do spiritual mind treatment every afternoon, then I'll never get sick. I'll never have a diagnosis. Nothing bad will ever happen to me. That is not what we teach. What we teach is that by the power of mental thought, we can influence and change condition. What we teach is that the title of this section, Mental Practice, deals with thought, and what you heard in the first two paragraphs, that our mental thought has the power to create a pattern and to create changes so that we can manifest what we want to manifest. Any comments in Facebook or any other comments, Ryan, before I continue on?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge we had a few comments in here that really wanted you to explain more about how we can use visioning as a process in part of this.
Great. So there are two things, and I'm going to briefly talk about both of them because I I'm not able to ask further questions for clarification. So there is visioning and there is visualization, and they are two different things. So how can we use each of those or both of those as we train our thoughts? Because that's really what we're doing. We're using mental thought to create a change in condition. We're using mental thought to set a new cause into motion. So visioning, when we say visioning, we are talking about a specific spiritual practice that is a receptive practice that allows us to be open to Spirit's divine guidance about what is the highest vision of what we want. What could be, I could be do visioning on what is Spirit's highest vision for my business, or what is Spirit's highest vision for my relationships with my sisters, or what is Spirit's highest vision for the way that I volunteer and am in service at CSLDallas. And in that case, I'm not deciding anything. I am simply saying I am open to guidance. I'm open to a wisdom that is bigger than what I already know. And it's similar to a meditation in that it's receptive. I'm receiving. And that can be helpful because if I do a series of visioning sessions, then I may begin to have some ideas about what is the highest vision for the direction I want to go. But visualization is what people are often thinking about when they say, how can I practice or how can I use visualization? So when we are visualizing, let's say I've decided that in the next 6 months I want to move. And I start getting really clear about the kind of place I want to live, where it is, what kinds of things I have around me, etc., who I want to, live with, the kind of people. And I'm starting to get a clear visualization of that. Now, I may just do that mentally. I may create a treasure map or a vision board. I may create signs and affirmations around my house so that I have something visual to look at with my eyes that affirms what I am thinking. So visioning is a spiritual practice that is more receptive and then can give me ideas about what I want to visualize as a reinforcement of the thoughts and the direction I want to go. That's a really great question. Ryan?
And thank you for your explanation, as always, Tracy. I just want to read this comment, and then I'm going to allow Cecilia to come up and talk. So we had a comment come into the chat, and I think this really reflects with what we're talking about. It says, a quick method to turn on the light is, quote-unquote, heart math, which is to breathe into your heart and drop your awareness there and remember a happy moment. So breathe in, allow yourself the consciousness of your heart. As you breathe out, remember a happy moment. So I thought that was really good. All right, Cecilia, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hey, Tracy.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was thinking while you were reading that, and I'm actually in a place right now where I'm really having to apply how my mental thoughts it can affect me. So essentially, at the core of everything, I'm very nervous about returning to work Monday. I've been in the building for 2 weeks. I actually get kids tomorrow morning. But what I'm focused on is the good that I see that my district is attempting to do to protect all of us, right? So what I am having to switch my thought process from I'm a little scared to, well, we have this protocol in place, we have that protocol, and I'm having to like mentally, it's a little extra work because I literally have to turn the switch every time the fear pops up. And it took me back to remembering when I first came to Science of Mind and really started practicing switching my thought process. I didn't realize how much I had already switched my thought process until this. So it's really good practice, really good reminder to get myself into the place where I am using spiritual tools to affect my my mental stories.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. What a powerful example. And I am so glad you went back verbally to when you first started learning about Science of Mind and you first began to use a metaphysical approach, and when you first got into that practice of switching your thoughts, choosing your thoughts is what I like to think about. It's like often what we're afraid of, it's a default. It shows up. We did not summon it. But once we notice it, we get to choose, because I like, my motto since I was 16 years old is you always have a choice. So for me, I like to think of it as, oh, wait, I didn't choose that thought. My brain chose that thought because it was afraid or it was unsure. But I get to choose. I get to choose this other thought, this new direction. And so I love that you mentioned that, because what you're also demonstrating for all of us, Cecilia, is that we get on automatic. We develop a skill, we develop ways of being, and then things around us change. And we recognize we already have the skill. We just have to consciously apply it. And so you are so right, so on target with noticing your fear, not beating yourself up about it, and then choosing to replace that fear with fact, with information. But wait, we have protocols in place. Well, wait, what I know is absolutely true is I am here to serve the students, the children. What I know is, right? You get to have a series of affirmations that allow you to take that deep breath. And the person who posted about heart math, it's one of so many techniques that is important for us to find, the techniques that work for each one of us, because there's an infinite number of techniques, and each one of us will find the 3 or 4 that become our go-tos. So also, Cecilia, what you said leads right into the next part. So I know we may have somebody waiting, but I want to read this next paragraph. So we've talked about the philosophy of spiritual mind healing, thoughts are things. We've talked about this system of treatment is for the purpose of uncovering and neutralizing wrong states of thought. Notice you got to uncover them before you can neutralize them. And that it's ours to turn on the light, but we don't have to fight the darkness. We just turn on the light. So here's the next paragraph. Therefore, spiritual treatment does not concern itself with unpleasant conditions, nor with imperfect manifestations, either in one's body or the body of one's affairs. Treatment is for the purpose of inducing an interior awareness, an inner realization in the mind of the practitioner pertaining to the spiritual perfection of the person for whom she is working. And more often than not, we are being the practitioner working for ourselves. That's not in there. That's just me clarifying, right? So again, the purpose of our treatment is not to be concerned with the unpleasant conditions or what's imperfect, whether it's in our body because of a physical diagnosis or a physical condition, or whether it is the body of our affairs. Treatment is for the purpose of inducing an interior awareness or realization, right? An interior awareness realization, I would add, or reminder of the changeless reality that life is good, all is well, I've been made in the image of the divine, my life is made for good. And when we do that, we are able to practice reconnecting ourselves with the good that is seeking to express in our lives, for our lives, or through our lives. So even as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh my goodness, Cecilia, with the example of, being an educator and being in a school where there will be children returning tomorrow. It's like, what is the good that is being expressed or seeking to be expressed through you in the education of these wonderful children? What is the good that is seeking to be expressed as you, as an example for other teachers and staff and even for yourself? What's the good that is seeking to express in you as you remind yourself that you are divinely protected and that you are an emanation, a unique emanation of the One? It's like that inner realization is what treatment is all about, what mental thought. And all treatment is the directing mental thought for a specific cause. And the same thing with Connie's example earlier. It's like, wow, we're not to fight. Ernest Holmes says, spiritual treatment does not concern itself with unpleasant conditions nor with imperfect manifestations. So we're not to get caught up in what's not working, but we do have to notice it and name it in order to neutralize it. So we use mental thought to recognize what's happening and then to neutralize it by replacing it with powerful, clear, direct thought that is the equivalent of turning on the light. So I'm just going to take a breath and check in with Ryan to see if I need to stop or if I can go into Changeless Reality. I love this chapter.
Well, I love that chapter too, and thanks for checking in with me. I'm just going to read this comment that came in from Bobby. She's my quote finder. I really love and appreciate you, Bobby, for finding all these wonderful quotes for me. So this one is from Emerson. Only finite is wrought and suffers. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. I love that one.
Read it again for people who are hearing it for the first time.
And for those who are hearing it for the first time, this is from Emerson's essays, right?
Yes.
Only the finite is wrought and suffers. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. Doesn't that just sound about right?
Yes, yes, yes. Only the finite, that which has limits, that which has borders, that which changes, that is the only thing that can be wrought with, that can be affected by, that can reflect anything that is out of the norm. But the infinite is the example of perfection. And of course, it can rest in smiling repose because there is nothing that can hurt it. There is nothing that can extinguish it. There is nothing that can make it go away. It is infinite. It is perfect. And so that quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson is a favorite of so many of us who are metaphysicians, because it reminds us that yes, I am in this body. My body is finite. My human experience has limits and borders. But that part of me, which is the divine, the infinite that is expressing within me, is a changeless reality. I'm going to get to this one way or another. It is a changeless reality, because how could it be any other way? It is just simply constantly expressing, expanding, and evolving, but that is its nature. So the next section, the next two paragraphs in this chapter, we're in chapter 13, if you joined us in the last few minutes, which is a chapter titled Causes and Conditions, and it focuses on the practice of mental thought. And this second section is titled Changeless Reality. All right, take a deep breath, take this in. Spirit is changeless reality. That which we call personality is the instrument through which spirit operates. But spirit can operate for the individual only by operating through him. Spirit is never bound by the form it takes and is not affected by any apparent cause or condition, but is forever free. Spirit not only fills all forms, but surges around them and through them. Ice is formed from water. All ice is some form of water. Just so, God and man exist in an eternal state of unity. The solid and the liquid are one substance. We are dealing with an impersonal principle. It will operate for one just as quickly as for another, because it is law. Dare to speak, and to know that what you speak is the law unto the thing spoken, regardless of what conditions exist. One alone, in consciousness with the infinite, constitutes a complete majority. Just repeating that line. One alone, in consciousness with the infinite, constitutes a complete majority. Knowing this in your thought, work in perfect peace and calm. Always expect the good. Have enthusiasm, and above all, have a consciousness of love, a radiant feeling flowing through your consciousness at all times. Treat for yourself until you have an inner sense of unity with all good. God, Spirit, the divine is a changeless reality. And it is operating in, as, and through each one of us. But in our form, there is still the infinite, the changeless reality, not only in us, but around us, and in, as, and through everyone else. Ryan, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. I just wanted to bring in this last question for you. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, good morning, Tracy.
Hey, Jeff.
I guess there's no coincidences in life. Before this morning's meditation, I was reading part of the way it works, and it seems like this is exactly the same topic as I came across about the power to neutralize negative thought, to erase it, just as light has the power to overcome darkness.
Yes.
And what was really meaningful to me is it says from page 38 how it works. So, suppose one is laboring under the idea of limitation, etc., etc. Am I not saying in substance I cannot have and enjoy good things? I'm demonstrating that I cannot have or accomplish good. Here's the thing that kind of gave me goosebumps. It may take time to reshape the basis of his thought. He must commence by first saying, I perceive that because I am what I am.
Yes.
Because of this infinite thing that overshadows eternity and finds its abiding place in me, I know that good is now mine. All good. There's no mental coercion, but it's things are brought into being not by will, but by the power of the self-assertive truth. So I think, what I got out of that is, I'm really getting this. I'm growing a lot. I notice a major shift. But, I'm still noticing that I have thoughts of limitation, and I make up all kinds of stories about why I can't do something or what I'm not. And this is telling me that my first step is to acknowledge I perceive that because I am what I am. That's my experience. That has been my life. That's been my teaching, my culture, my family background, etc. But eventually I must come to say that, I perceive that infinite thing that overshadows eternity is now finding an abiding place in me. And I know that good is now mine. Yes, that brought tears to my eyes this morning. So
Beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. And those first 4 chapters in the introduction to the science of mind, Ernest Holmes did an amazing thing. When we read those first 4 chapters in the introduction, really we get everything that is the principle. And then, the next 500 pages are just fleshing that out. So good for you for seeing the connection between what he's talking about in this chapter of how we actually practice with our mental thought. And it is absolutely connected to how it works. And all he's doing here is further explaining that. So really, that connection is solid. And isn't it fascinating to realize once again that everything that has happened to me in my life, it happened. It's real in terms of the human experience, and it is not all of who I am. I am not limited to it. So when we say principle is not bound by precedent, we say that because the changeless reality is when I say I am the I am all of that. Spirit is always present, but I may not have noticed it. So we are constantly evolving into into recognizing that, oh wow, I can turn the light on. The light's already there. All I have to do is turn it on. And the more I do that, obviously the more that fills me up, the more it drives my actions, the more it fills my thoughts. But as long as we are in our human bodies, we will sometimes be distracted by something that happened, or the way we were socialized, or a significant emotional experience we had when we were 5 years old or 50 years old. All of that is happening at the same time. But it doesn't change the essence, what I often refer to as our true essential nature is a physical manifestation of the nature of God. So I love in this Changeless Reality section, Dr. Petra often uses, and just recently in the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago, used the example that is in this paragraph about water, whether it's liquid or whether it's ice. I would go on to add, or whether it's steam, right? It's still H2O. It's still an essential nature, simply in another form based on the conditions it finds itself in. And in this chapter, as we are practicing this week, practicing monitoring our mental thoughts, what I want to challenge you to do is to remember that your thoughts are what become your life, your predominant life experience. Not the conditions. You may not control every single condition you find yourself in. But whatever condition you find yourself in, whatever causes are happening, it is your mental thought that you have the power to direct. And that is what we are looking at in this chapter. And that sets us up perfectly to then begin to think about what really makes it work. This is how it works, but what really makes it work, and how do we practice even more turning away from the condition and turning toward our thoughts toward what we want. And that's where we will go next week. So I hope that you have gotten something juicy to think about today and through the coming week. Again, if you want to reread this, I was reading from pages 183 and 184 in The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. And I invite you to join me now as we close out in prayer. I remember in this moment that if it were not for God, if it were not for Spirit, there would be nothing. For it is God, it is Spirit that is the creator of all of life. And with deep gratitude for this moment along the time-space continuum to be together and to explore the wisdom, the ancient wisdom captured and synthesized by Ernest Holmes, I'm able to now go into the rest of the day grounded, grateful, and curious. And so we end our time together by calling it good and very good, and claiming the best for ourselves and for all of humanity, and in fact all of life. And we end together by saying, and so it is.